Hello everyone, I'm a history senior. My name is Hanين. In this video, I'm gonna talk about the American War of Independence in 9 points after introducing it. So let's get started. The American War of Independence is the war that took place between Britain and the United States of America in 1775 to 1783, when America was just a British colony. You can also call this war by the American Revolution. First thing we need to talk about is the general situations before the outbreak of this war. The second thing is the course of this war. The first thing is the general situations before the outbreak of this war. Britain won the 7 Years' War that took place between France and Britain in 1756 to 1763. But this 7 Years' War caused a financial crisis in Britain, and to solve this problem, the British government imposed taxes on its colonies in America, such as the sugar tax in 1764, honey tax, wine tax, coffee tax. We also have laws that put the Americans in a bad situation, and the British government said that the British Army needs more expenses to be able to protect the Americans. And this is how the Americans lived in that period. But how was the ruling system in America? There is the ruler who represents the British king. He is subordinate to him, so he represents the king, not the people. And there is the legislative council, which represents the people and do the important things, such as setting laws, imposing taxes, and taking care of the affairs of employees, etc. And because of the large number of taxes, the Americans believed that the British Parliament has no right to impose taxes on them as long as the Americans didn't accept them. No taxation without representation. As I told you, after introducing this revolution, we're gonna talk about the course of it in 9 points. Point 1. A group that called the Sons of Liberty emerged, whose mission was to organize the American opposition. These Sons of Liberty were 9 at the beginning, and they called by the Loyal 9. Of course, they didn't stay as 9, because this number started to rise and rise by time. They worked secretly because it was a secret organization, and historians believes that Sons of Liberty executed the Boston Tea Party. Whatever, I can tell you about some of them, like Samuel Adams, John Hancock, Patrick Henry, Benedict Arnold, James Oates, Isaac Caesar, Thomas Crafts, Joseph Warren, Thomas Chase, and John Smith. Point 2. The Boston Massacre. In 1770's winter evening, the Boston Massacre occurred. But what is the meaning of the Boston Massacre and why did it happen in Boston? I'll tell you about it. The opposition was more intense in Boston than the other areas because Boston is an important commercial center. The British government had sent soldiers to Boston. In 1770, the opposition escalated in Boston. So the Americans attacked the British soldiers that I told you about. And the British soldiers' reaction was to shoot them. And 5 of these opponents were killed, and 6 were wounded. Now, as you can see, the situation has changed. Why? Because the bloodshed has started. Point 3. The boycotting. The Americans boycotted the British products, which greatly affected the British economy. And Britain's reaction was that the British Parliament abolished the taxes and laws that we talked about except the tea tax. Why did they do that? Why did they keep the tea tax? Just to prove that they have the right to impose taxes on the Americans. And the Americans' reaction was like that. Number one, boycotting the British tea and buy smuggled tea from Holland instead of it, even if it costs more. Number two, the Boston Tea Party in 1773 that we're gonna talk about in the fourth point. Point four, Boston Tea Party. Sons of Liberty with a group of Americans executed this plan. What happened and what was their plan? It was like that. They dressed as Native Americans and secretly went to Boston Harbor. There were British ships loaded with tea. And what did they do? They threw all the tea into the water. The British Parliament got angry and issued the coercive acts against the city of Boston. These coercive acts, like that, number one, closing the port of Boston until the price of the tea that they threw away is paid. So they had to pay the price of the tea that they threw away in the water. Number two, appointing General Thomas Gage as a military governor of Massachusetts. Number three, prohibiting meetings without the approval of the British military authorities. Number five, Philadelphia Congress in 1774. First meeting of the American Congress. The leaders of the 13 colonies met in Philadelphia and decided number one, not to submit the coercive acts. Number two, asking the British king to repeal these coercive acts. Number three, boycott all British products and form committees to organize the boycott, to know who is boycotting, and force those who don't boycott to boycott. But Britain didn't respond to their demands and didn't repeal these coercive acts. In this case, the Americans established a camp in the city of Concord and collected a lot of weapons there. When this news reached the governor Thomas Gage, he sent his soldiers to take these weapons from Americans and arrest the national leaders in Concord. But the Americans defeated them in Lexington. Point 6. The Second Philadelphia Congress. The American Congress met in 1775, headed by George Washington. They decided to consider the Boston Army as an American army. Point 7. In 1776, the U.S. Congress proclaimed the independence of the United States of America from Britain. Number 8. George Washington headed his soldiers to expel the British forces from Boston, and a series of battles began. We will talk about two of them. Number one, the Battle of Saratoga in 1777. The Americans won in this battle, and Britain lost an entire army of 6,000 fighters, and France recognized the independence of the United States of America. Now we will call it by the United States of America, not the American colonies or the British colonies in America. The other battle that we're gonna talk about is the Battle of Yorktown. It's the last battle in the War of Independence. In this battle, French helped the Americans, and together they defeated Britain. Point 9. The War of Independence ended with the Treaty of Paris in 1783, and the British recognition in the independence of the United States of America.